This is John Jackson Miller. I am the founder and curator of Comichron.com, the world's largest public database of comic book sales figures. Here with the sales charts for December 2018 and a look at 2018 overall. This report, as usual, is put together based on our research into the sales that are reported by Diamond Comic distributors every month. And it's quite a bit late this time, much later than I had intended. The January month is always very complicated because there's the numbers coming in from both the monthly figures and then also the annual figures, which have to be reconciled. And then I had a number of work issues and other things that had to be dealt with. And it was more important to get the estimates on the website first and then the video later. So now December 2018 had 4 shipping weeks, just like November did. Comic sales were down 3.5% by dollars. Graphic novel sales down 17%. And that was a lot more than expected. This has been sort of the Achilles heel of the entire year, is that in part, graphic novel sales are down overall through Diamond to retailers. But then also, we have retailers shifting those graphic novel sales, or purchases rather, earlier into the year and out of December. December also is handicapped by having only 3 real shipping weeks. The Christmas shipping week only had just a handful of items come out from the major publishers as part of an arrangement with Diamond to keep something in the channel during that week. And we'll see that looking at the same month previous year, comics in dollar terms up 9%. It's just those graphic novel sales down 26%. As we've said, most of the year, it's not clear that those sales are necessarily gone. They could be retailers still buying those graphic novels, just not from Diamond. There are a number of other distributors that sell to comic shops that sell graphic novels. The exclusives, that has to do with comic books. That doesn't have to do with graphic novels. Then we have the fact that there are other channels, the book channel with Amazon and Barnes & Noble and places like that, that are also selling graphic novels out there. So it's entirely possible that graphic novel sales can be down in the comics market and yet up overall. We just will not know until we get all the numbers in from 2018. The net was that December was down 2% overall. And another factor in this was as we had noted through much of the year, the number of releases continued to lag versus the previous year. DC in particular, 52 comic books coming out in the month of December. That is the smallest number of comic books that DC has put out in any single month since 1991. So we're going way back before the boom of the early 90s. To get to a point where there are that few comic books. Now, these numbers only reflect sort of individual comic books with unique interiors. The variant covers are not counted in these figures. This is, if you took variant covers completely out of the equation, this is how many comic books came out from each publisher. 90 from Marvel, which is about average for them over the last few years. At DC at 52, that's the same number as Image in the month. That is, again, quite low. And we do have in part that factor that the calendar is in play here with holiday shipping. But nonetheless, we did end up having 6% fewer comics come out in the year 2018 versus 2017. And lo and behold, we had comics unit sales down by nearly 6%. That said, comic sales were still up by 2% overall. And we'll look here and see that the net effect was that total comics and graphic novel sales were down 1%. Now, considering that in 2017 those sales were down 10%, this represents much more of a leveling off. We were sort of looking all year at the possibility that 2018 would claw back from the weak winter that we had last year and end up in the black. and it came close, but what did hit us in the end was sort of a November and December with not a lot of material out there. And certainly, that has a lot to do with what sells. We'll look at the market shares for December. Marvel 38%, DC 31.5%, Image close to 9% in dollars, and then we see the other publishers after that. Now, the number one comic book in the month of December was Batman Who Laughs #1. That was the top book in both units and dollars, and that is a book that sold to comic shops in North America, 226,000 copies. We actually have the numbers here this time because this isn't a preview video. This is a month where we have the video out after the numbers are already on Comichron. So you can see these numbers and all the other sales figures that we've estimated for the month of December on the website on the December 2018 page. Followed by Batman Damned #2. The next Doomsday Clock is the third place book. And then we have a couple of Batman issues, 60 and 61, in 4th and 5th place. Amazing Spider-Man 11 is in 6th. Fantastic Four 5, 7th. Amazing Spider-Man 12 is in 8th. Batman Annual #3 is 9th. And Shazam is in 10th. In the dollars, we see just a few differences there. Infinity War 6 gets onto the charts because of its price. Fantastic Four #5 goes higher up. Fantastic Four's Wedding Special also makes the list in the version that is just sorted by the number of dollars that retailers spent. Moving on to graphic novels, we see that Paper Girls Volume 5 was the #1 graphic novel in units and dollars. We see that Batman Volume 8 was #2, and Avatar Imbalance Part 1 was #3. Then in dollars, we see a number of $100 and $125 books make the charts. Now let's move on and take a look at some of the end-of-year numbers here. Now we know that the dollar value for the comics industry for the year overall is down close to 1%, so about $519 million in the direct market in terms of comics and graphic novels purchases. With the comics themselves, we'll see that Action 1000, as predicted, was #1. Amazing Spider-Man 800, #2. Batman 50 goes to 3rd place after the returns came in, because that book was made retroactively returnable, allowing Amazing Spider-Man 800 to surpass it. Fantastic Four 1 in 4th place. And then the relaunched Amazing Spider-Man #1, close to 300,000 copies in 5th place. And, we'll see here that one of the impacts of having all these comics that were, large, sellers in terms of the number of copies sold is that when you look at the top 1,000 comics that Diamond sold, even though the number of comics that Diamond sold overall was down 6%, just the top 1,000 comics was up. In 2017, 49.68 million copies of the top 1,000 sold. In 2018, it's almost 1 million more copies. And when you look at that chart in more detail, you'll see that we went from having only 3 comic books in 2017 that sold over 200,000 copies up to 11, which was the number that we had, or that we believe that we had in 2016. 2016 was that year where Diamond did not release end-of-year figures, but our projection is that there were 11 in 2016, and again 11 in 2018. Now, where we see, another difference as well is in the, 75,000 to 100,000 comic copy category. We'll see that, the number of comics that made that grouping went from 50 up to 77. Now, where things sort of fall off, though, is in the lower tiers. We have under 200 comics selling in the 50 to 75,000 copy grid, and then under 800 in the 25,000 to 50,000 grouping. And another way to look at this is just to do it graduated, so this is the cumulative number of copies in each grouping, and you can see that 75,000 copies and up, there is quite the rebound from 2017. It's just once you get further down the list, because in part there are so many fewer comics coming out, When you have as many fewer DC comics as were this year versus in 2017, you're going to have a lot fewer books in the 25,000 copy and up grouping, and that's what we see here. We see 1,074 comic books sold more than 25,000 copies. That is still higher than 2011 and 2010, but it is the lowest figure in a number of years here. Now, who published those top 1,000 comic books? This is a big category for Marvel here. 535, or more than 53% of the top 1,000 comics were published by Marvel, and that's an increase of 33 copies. DC, 399 copies. That's a drop of 60. Again, that's reflective of, in part, the number of fewer titles that were released. Image gets a big boost here, up 23 copies, or up 23 comics to 52. Now, when we look over at graphic novels, Infinity Gauntlet, this is a comic book that's almost 30 years old, or a graphic novel that's almost 30 years old, was number one in the comic shops. Over 40,000 copies sold. The most recent Saga volume is in second, and then Saga Volume 1 is in third. And the Action 80 Years of Superman book is in fifth. And when we look at how that broke down dollar-wise, just in the top 1,000, again, this just was not a good year for graphic novels. We saw it drop $15 million from 2017 down to about the level things were at in 2011. Now, as to who published those graphic novels, here we have DC again slipping 29 copies to 277. DC had pretty much perennially led this category, the number of entries in the top 1,000 for graphic novels. Marvel picked up 8 entries and was able to move into first place. Image is up 2 entries to 190, and Viz went up to 58. Now that is a look at the December sales figures and something about what happened in 2018 overall. On Comichron, we have both the individual months and we have the year-end report. Just go to the monthly comic sales section, and you can either click one of the years or you can click one of the months to get your specific month that you're interested in. So until next time, this is John Jackson Miller, and I'll see you at the comic shop.